You sit in the doctor's office looking at an X-ray of your knee. The doctor sighs and says, "Well, it's just wear and tear. You're getting older. Your cartilage is wearing out like a bald tire on a car." And in that moment, something inside you drops. Because what you hear is not just a diagnosis. What you hear is a sentence. A sentence that says, "This is normal. This is your fate. Learn to live with it." But what if that story is incomplete? What if your joints are not car tires? What if cartilage is not just a piece of dead rubber slowly rubbing away from years of movement? What if there is a deeper biology happening under the surface? One that changes everything about how we understand arthritis. Today, I want to challenge the most common myth in joint health. That arthritis is just mechanical damage from age. Because for many people, that is not the full story at all. Before we go any further, I need to make one thing very clear. Osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis are not the same disease. Rheumatoid arthritis, or RA, is an autoimmune disease. That means the immune system attacks the body's own tissues, often causing pain, swelling, stiffness, and loss of function in multiple joints. It is not simply wear and tear, and it is not something to self-treat casually. Osteoarthritis, or OA, is different. OA is the condition many people are told is caused by aging and mechanical overload. But modern medicine now recognizes it as a disease of the whole joint, not just cartilage alone. That means bone, cartilage, synovium, ligaments, and surrounding tissues are involved. OA commonly affects the knees, hips, hands, and thumbs. And that difference matters, because the solutions are different. Autoimmune arthritis and metabolic or mechanical osteoarthritis do not follow the same script. This video is for educational purposes only. Never stop your prescribed arthritis medications without consulting your rheumatologist. Stopping autoimmune medication abruptly can cause severe flare-ups. So if arthritis is not just a simple case of the joint wore out, then the real question becomes, what is actually driving the damage? Why do some people with plenty of age-related wear have little pain, while others feel their joints screaming long before the X-ray looks dramatic? That is where the story gets much more interesting. Because the problem is not always just motion, mileage, or age. Sometimes the real driver is happening inside the body, quietly, systemically, and for years before the joint pain becomes impossible to ignore. And once you understand that, you stop blaming your body for failing, and start understanding what it has been trying to survive. Let us talk about the phrase people hear all the time. Wear and tear. It sounds reasonable. It sounds almost comforting, because it makes arthritis seem predictable, mechanical, and simple. But science has moved far beyond that old explanation. The National Institute of Arthritis and Musculoskeletal and Skin Diseases says osteoarthritis is not caused by simple wear and tear alone. It involves changes in the joint tissues that trigger a breakdown process over time. And that matters, because if arthritis were only about mileage, then every joint with the most use would fail in the same way, at the same time, in every person. But that is not what we see. Some people have dramatic pain with modest imaging changes, while others have severe X-ray changes and far less pain. In other words, the X-ray tells part of the story, but not the whole story. If wear and tear were the full explanation, then movement itself would be the enemy. But the evidence does not support that. In fact, multiple reviews have found that recreational running is not associated with worsening structural progression of knee osteoarthritis, and some studies even suggest lower OA occurrence in recreational runners compared with controls. That does not mean elite high-volume training is harmless in every case. It means the joint is not simply being used up by ordinary movement. That is a huge distinction. Because when patients hear wear and tear, they often stop moving out of fear. They protect the joint so much that the muscles weaken, the mobility drops, and the pain spiral gets worse. The problem is not that the joint is a disposable hinge. The problem is that the joint is a living organ, and living organs respond to load, nutrition, inflammation, and repair signals. And here is another detail that exposes the myth. Osteoarthritis does not only happen in the joints that carry body weight. It commonly affects the hands, thumbs, knees, hips, feet, and spine. That means people can develop OA in joints like the knuckles and thumb base, not just the knees and hips that absorb walking force. So when someone says, "It is just because you walk too much," that explanation collapses fast. Yes, mechanics matter. Yes, injuries matter. But OA is not just a simple story of friction between two surfaces. It is a whole joint condition shaped by tissue biology, inflammation, loading patterns, body composition, and the joint's ability to maintain itself over time. This is the part most people were never taught. Cartilage is living tissue. It is built and maintained by cells called chondrocytes, which continuously regulate the cartilage matrix around them. Cartilage has a very low regenerative capacity compared with many other tissues, but it is not inert dead material. Its health depends on a careful balance between building and breakdown. That means cartilage does not simply rub away like a bald tire. The body is constantly trying to maintain the joint environment. When the balance is disrupted, when breakdown outpaces repair, you get thinning, stiffness, pain, and loss of function. That is why the old wear and tear story is so incomplete. It describes the end result, but not the process that caused it. And once you understand that, everything changes. Because if OA is a living tissue problem, then the real question is no longer, how do I accept the damage? The real question becomes, what is driving the joint out of balance in the first place? And that is where the metabolic story begins. Now we get to the part that changes everything. For many people, osteoarthritis is not simply a story of aging joints. Researchers increasingly describe a metabolic phenotype of osteoarthritis, a pattern linked to insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, obesity, low-grade inflammation, and altered joint biology. In other words, the joint is not just being used up. It is being affected by the chemistry of the whole body. That is why two people can have the same age and the same X-ray findings, yet very different pain, stiffness, and progression. The joint is not failing in isolation. It is responding to the internal environment around it. If your blood sugar spikes regularly, or if your body is insulin resistant, that is not just a pancreas problem. It can affect cartilage and the synovium too. Reviews of osteoarthritis and diabetes describe shared pathways involving inflammation and metabolic dysregulation, and insulin resistance has been linked to cartilage vulnerability through effects on chondrocytes, synovium, and inflammatory signaling. Here is the key idea. Insulin is not only about glucose storage. In healthy cartilage biology, insulin has anabolic, supportive effects. When insulin resistance develops, that helpful signaling gets blunted, and the joint can become more susceptible to inflammatory and degradative forces. So when someone says, "Your knee hurts because it is old," that explanation misses a major driver. Sometimes the joint is being biologically stressed by the metabolic terrain inside the body. One of the most important mechanisms here is the formation of advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. When excess sugar circulates in the body, it can bind to proteins and fats and create these sticky compounds over time. In cartilage, AGEs have been shown to increase collagen cross-linking, reduce the tissue's flexibility, and make the cartilage matrix more brittle and easier to damage. That means sugar is not only a bloodstream issue. It can become a tissue issue. AGEs also activate inflammatory pathways through receptors such as RAGE, which can increase chondrocyte stress, inflammatory mediator release, and matrix breakdown. So imagine cartilage that used to be supple and resilient becoming stiff, brittle, and more prone to microscopic cracks. That is not a tire wearing down from the outside. That is biology being chemically altered from the inside. And then there is the lubricating fluid inside the joint, synovial fluid. Normal synovial fluid contains hyaluronic acid, also called hyaluronan, which helps maintain viscosity, lubrication, cushioning, and joint integrity. In osteoarthritis, studies have shown that synovial fluid viscosity and elasticity are reduced, and the joint environment becomes less protective for cartilage. That matters because cartilage does not have its own direct blood supply. It depends on the joint environment around it. When inflammation rises and the quality of synovial fluid declines, the cartilage loses part of the biological support it needs to stay healthy. So the picture becomes clear: metabolic stress, insulin resistance, blood sugar instability, ages, and inflammation can all work together to dry out the joint environment and accelerate cartilage breakdown. That is why osteoarthritis is often better understood as a whole-body metabolic problem showing up in the joint. And that changes the entire conversation. Because once you realize the joint is being attacked from the inside by metabolic inflammation, the solution cannot be just a painkiller that turns the volume down. You have to address the metabolic storm and support the joint environment at the same time. That is where the next step begins. Once you understand that osteoarthritis can be driven by metabolic inflammation, the strategy becomes much clearer. You do not just chase pain. You address the terrain. Clinical guidance for knee osteoarthritis consistently supports exercise, and sustained weight loss in overweight or obese patients can improve pain and function. That is important because changing the metabolic environment can change the load on the joint and the symptoms people feel. So the first part of the protocol is simple, but powerful. Stabilize blood sugar, reduce metabolic inflammation, move the joint in a smart way, and work with the clinician who knows your case best. A medication may be appropriate for symptom control, but symptom control alone does not rebuild the whole environment around the joint. That is why the bigger goal is support, not just suppression. And I need to say this very clearly: never stop your prescribed medications without talking to your rheumatologist or prescribing clinician. That is especially true if you have rheumatoid arthritis or any inflammatory arthritis, because those medicines are controlling an immune process, not just dulling discomfort. Abruptly stopping them can allow the disease to flare. This is where wisdom matters more than hype. The right approach is not rebellion against medicine. The right approach is to combine medical care with a better metabolic strategy so your joints are not fighting the same internal fire every day. The joint also needs its lubrication environment restored. Synovial fluid is produced by the lining of the joint and is rich in hyaluronic acid, also called hyaluronan, which helps with lubrication and cushioning. In osteoarthritis, studies show that the concentration of hyaluronic acid in synovial fluid is reduced and its properties change, leaving the joint environment less protective. That is why the joint jelly idea matters. It is not a gimmick. It is a way of describing the fluid environment that allows cartilage to glide, absorb force, and stay better protected. When that environment thins out, friction and stiffness become easier to feel. That is also why some people look for a biological support tool alongside their lifestyle changes. Joint Genesis is presented on its official site as a joint support supplement designed to support aging joints, mobility, comfort, and flexibility. The site also states that it contains Mobility, which it describes as a concentrated source of hyaluronic acid, collagen, and polysaccharides, and it says the formula is meant to help support joint lubrication. So, as an adjunct to medical care, this is how I would frame it. You are not trying to replace your rheumatologist, and you are not trying to outsmart your diagnosis. You are trying to nourish the joint environment while you work on the metabolic root cause. That is a very different philosophy from simply numbing the pain and hoping the joint stays quiet. So the real protocol is not mysterious. Lower the metabolic pressure. Keep the joint moving in a safe, structured way. Protect your medical treatment plan. And, if you choose, Use supportive tools to help create a better environment inside the joint while the deeper work happens. That is how you move from fear to strategy. Let me leave you with something important. Your body is not a broken machine waiting to be thrown away. In osteoarthritis, the joint is a living system, and modern guidance recognizes that the condition involves changes in the cartilage, synovium, bone, ligaments, and other tissues, not just old age or simple rubbing alone. It also means that the way forward is not hopeless. It is strategic. When people are told, it is just wear and tear, they often blame their age and stop looking for the real drivers. But the truth is more empowering than that. If the joint is part of a whole body process, then the whole body process matters. That means blood sugar, inflammation, movement, weight, sleep, and medical care all belong in the conversation. So stop blaming yourself for being old. Stop assuming pain means the story is over. And stop letting a simplistic phrase erase the biology that is actually happening inside your body. For many people with osteoarthritis, the most evidence-based foundations still include tailored exercise. And for those living with overweight or obesity, weight loss can improve pain and function. Those are not punishment strategies. They are tools for changing the joint environment. That is why I want you to think in a new way. Not, how do I survive this? But, how do I give my joints a better biological environment to live in? That question opens the door to real progress. If you want to explore a biological joint support approach while you work on the metabolic root cause, check the link in the description for the Joint Nourishment Protocol. Use it as support, not as a substitute for proper diagnosis, medication, or follow-up care. This video is for educational purposes only. Do not start, stop, or change any prescribed arthritis medication on your own. If you have rheumatoid arthritis or another inflammatory arthritis, keep working with your rheumatologist, because those conditions are managed differently from osteoarthritis. Never make medication changes without professional medical guidance. Rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease, while osteoarthritis affects the whole joint and is managed with a different framework.